2014 Polaris Ranger 800 6-wheel drive side-by-side. And then we've got ourselves a 1990 Mitsubishi mini cab key truck, which actually has a significantly smaller engine in it. This is an 800, that's a 550. So, we're gonna take them and smash them together. Can't fit both machines in the shop at the same time. So, I'm gonna start by just stripping off everything that I don't need on this, which is gonna be quite a lot of stuff. I'll just strip off, you know, all of these plastic covers, and then I'm just gonna start disassembling this whole front end because it's all gonna have to change. Maybe not weight reduction, but definitely plastic reduction. Oh, yeah, that came off pretty easy. An hour pressure washing this thing yesterday, and it's still full of mud. I think it was driven through some swamps before we got a hold of it. Which, I mean, if you have a 6x6, why would you not drive it through a swamp? All the battery stuff is in the exact spot on this that it is on the key truck. I mean, give or take. The battery is right here, so merging the wiring systems should be pretty easy. Shouldn't have to do too much, you know, lengthening or shortening, because I'm gonna just take the parts that I need from the key truck and take the parts that I need and just make a battery tray in this general region. These wheel bearings are not premium at all. All of those are the worst wheel bearings I have ever seen. They are really bad. Some of that's also the bushings on the suspension, but in combination, that is really bad.
Yeah.
I think we need to head over to eBay Motors and order up a whole stack of Polaris parts. I'm just looking at kind of like what the maximum shortening here is. And basically if we just took this point and moved it straight back to this point, it'd be about 25 inches, which is a crazy reduction in wheelbase. And I think that would probably still be okay with the U-joints here, because you can see this drive shaft's at a slight angle. If this point here were to move back to about here, the drive shaft would still be 18 inches long or so, which should be still enough to flex those U-joints in a reasonable fashion, because the back one is way back here at the middle of the engine. Time to go out and measure the mini truck and see what kind of shortening, how much weight shortening we want to do. The number that matters is not the overall length of the vehicle, but the overall length from center of this axle to back of vehicle. We're looking at like 101, we'll call it 100 inches. The real weight reduction is getting all the mud out of this chassis. I understand that when you're building chassis, it's much easier to have them planned to be not air and water tight and have them have drain holes and such. But in practice, it just seems to mean that you just have a chassis full of mud, you know?
Yeah, there's a surprising amount in there.
you go. That's how you cut 18 inches out of a Polaris 6x6 in an afternoon. It's mostly welded back together. I didn't get the bottoms yet, but that's fine because it's not needing to be 100% solid yet. So I'm thinking we'll move that there pile of junk and give this thing a push outside and set it next to the key truck so we can visualize. There's nothing wrong with it. Just replace the cable with some rope and you know, clean it up a little bit. If you designed this frame and you're watching this right now, I'm sorry. I did not mean to insult your intelligence.
Ethan's not actually sorry. He actually hates it.
Well, I do hate it. I'm sorry for, you know, insulting someone who designed it, but that doesn't mean I like it anymore. We decided to hike up the shop roof here to get a little different perspective and look down on it. Looks pretty cool.
I hope you guys have noticed we've super increased the level of our videos recently, and that is directly because before Christmas, the BRZ giveaway did so well. We could afford to do this, a really special project that's our most expensive project ever, and the Hayabusa video. These types of videos are so expensive and take so many man hours, we couldn't afford to do it any other way but your support. We get all this stuff printed in the US. We ship every single order out of my garage. My wife does all of the emails with you guys, make sure everyone's taken care of. So we just can't thank you enough. This is the new line.
We got these hats with this premium rubber logo here. We got these awesome green shirts with the skull logo. And I even made some super limited edition bottle openers and such. This is the premium bottle opener in honor of us, you know, being obsessed with that word.
For the first time ever, we have crew necks, and this black is under the logo. It's super bold. Brand new koozies with magnets, so you can attach your sparkling waters to whatever you're working on. This is our most limited merch line ever, so if you want to get on it now, especially these. These always sell out in like a couple hours. So check out the site, support the channel. It's much appreciated. Let's get back to the key truck.
Yeah, like, hang on. I bet I can probably... I could almost tip this, so like with two of me, you could just pick it up and tip it over.
You lift up the whole thing, the front just moves.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's perfect in that the cab starts here.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So you're not gonna need to shorten anything from like here.
No. Obviously I'll need to redo mounts and such. That's all we need off the back section. It's such a little itty bitty fella.
Oh, the exhaust was very done.
Oh yeah, it's El Dunzo.
Wow, it got like shreked.
Yeah, and it was shreked a while ago too, because it burnt through where the welds ripped off, and then it just kept running after
going.
that.
Yep. A lot of stuff I'm hoping to be able to actually use for the controls, like the e-brake and the shifter and stuff like that, so it'll all look like key truck stuff inside, but work with the Polaris stuff. So just taking everything apart. I just got the whole wiring harness peeled back from the back section, because all of this can just stay assembled. Because I'm just gonna have to cut this frame in half back up here, because the body doesn't come off. It's all unibody up there. Isn't that just the cutest little alternator you ever seen?
Oh yeah.
Oh, little baby. I'm just putting a lot of faith in gravity here. I'm unbolting all of the stuff and hoping gravity will just hold it together.
Is it hanging only by ratchet straps at the moment?
The struts are still kind of holding it up to some extent because they're still there. They're not attached, but it's kind of halfway sitting on them. So yeah, the plan is to tighten up the ratchet straps a little bit and then cut the frame off back here. And then in theory, the cab should be able to just lift out of the way, and then we can finagle all of this stuff out. It's gonna be a little tricky because the front isn't really attached to the rear. Yeah, and then we can get the Polaris back in here and, you know, do some test fitting. I have it loosely suspended with ratchet straps. We're gonna see what happens when I try to cut the frame in half here. Nice! Nice. Perfect.
That is perfect.
Last night, got all the insides taken out of the key truck and got it kind of loosely situated over and around the 6x6, and that is probably the most glorious thing I've ever seen.
Dude, it's truly beautiful.
It needs to go back a couple inches, it needs to come this way a couple inches, so I'm gonna make sure there's nothing gonna be binding up under there, and then we'll kind of get that more situated. Also, I'm gonna pull this off. There's like a heat shield under there that's holding it up. Try to get that to sit a little bit better. I think for starters, we'll actually just take that and go whoop off of here just so I can get around because the cab is more important to locate than this. This is easy. That can happen, you know, anytime. Underneath here is where all the important stuff happens. This sway bar bushing has left the chat.
Entirely.
The sway, yes, the sway bar is no longer attached, so we'll order up some of those as well. While I'm ordering all these parts from eBay Motors, and it's worth noting that this video is sponsored by eBay Motors, but whether it was or not, that's 100% where we would get all the parts for this. It's where we've been getting all the parts for our projects for years. With the My Garage feature on eBay Motors, you can select what your car is, in this case, 2014 Polaris Ranger, and it'll only show you parts that fit your vehicle, and they're guaranteed to fit. You can see the little check mark there. So you know that all of those parts fit this here Ranger. Doing the old finger murderer 9000 method here. Basically what I'm trying to do here is lower it down, figure out where it's gonna sit, and then from there I can figure out what I need to cut out of it, because I'm probably gonna need to cut a lot of this structural part out of the cab. And then, you know, this is where the real work begins, where I have to figure out how to integrate this. Got that little piece of square tube, and I'm just gonna tack it to the body right here and right there, and that way it'll sit flat across this, as long as I get it reasonably symmetrically aligned, and then I can move it back and forth and put shims under it if I need to, or whatever. This flange is where the bed bolts on, and it's currently flush with this, which is fine, except that these bed support rails here stick down about 1.5 inches from that flange point. So that would mean the bed would be 1.5 inches higher than it's meant to be, or I'd have to notch out these rails. That would be annoying to have to notch out the rails because it would remove all the strength, and then I'd have to find a way to add strength back in. Plus, if I go up 1.25 inches on the cab, that's more clearance for suspension travel, which is always more good. Got a little chunk of 1.25 inch tube here, square tube. I'll just cut 4 little chunks out of it so I can space up the places where it's clamped on currently and hopefully not lose my alignment. Then we'll move on from there. It's definitely a little farther forward by like maybe 1 inch or 2 than what I kind of had measured for. And I think that's just because I moved it forward to clear the, to help make the tires clear easier, because it's easier to trim the back side of this fender than it is the front. You know, just kind of trim that out a little bit there. Or we could scale the whole thing back, you know, a bit, but right there, it actually kind of, Actually, yeah, that would totally clear the front of the fender well. I have the beginnings of a plan here. I was kind of looking around at steering shafts and such, and this is the output from the steering column, and for some reason it kind of points up, which we can work with, but it does at least point in the general direction of where the rack and pinion is, so that's at least, you know, something in the neighborhood of correct adjacent, as some people might say. The next dilemma is that these frame rails here on the key truck are in the way of the suspension traveling, and my temporary support back here is also in the way of that section of frame being chopped. So what I'm going to do first is cut this piece of 1.5-inch tube here and run it across here like this, and I'll tack it to this part of the chassis here and that bit of unibody for the key truck, because everything from here forward, there is no Polaris chassis, so I might as well use the unibody of the key truck and just kind of reinforce it. The shock needs to go kind of somewhere in that way, and all of this is in the way. So I'm gonna start by cutting somewhere in this kind of range, which is just behind that brace that I just welded in. So I'm gonna cut like that, and then I'm gonna drill out the spot welds here so I can keep the inner fender sheet metal for now. I'll just remove everything from there back on this frame rail, because I'm gonna redo all of that, because the more inner fender I can keep, the better in terms of keeping water out of the vehicle. Weight reduction. You. Well, that was way more of a pain than it should have been, but there we have it. I kept all of the inner fender. I have lots of nice razor sharp bits that I should round over before I cut myself on them. And that should now allow for more than enough wheel travel to, you know, bottom out in the fender well. Yeah, that, you know, runs into here now before the A-arms get in the way. Let's see how our shock angle looks. You know, later on I can fill in under here and have like a little storage compartment under the seat or whatever. But I've also got a little notch cut out of the inner fender here for where the shock goes. And I'm not sure exactly how close that is to the original angle, but it's an angle that would certainly work. And the good news is that shock is well below the height of where the seat goes in here. So that means that I can make a tube that goes from, say, up here where this tube and this meet, and, you know, comes up over for the shock tower and then back out to here somewhere, tie it into something there. Not really any easier the second time, but that part's done. So I got this other side chopped out, roughly similar. Obviously I'll make it all pretty later and plate things and gusset things and make them strong. last night I got this bar all, cut and figured out where it was gonna go. But the main thing is I got this bar here that's gonna go like that. And that will tie into this piece of 1.5-inch tubing I welded in there, down to the frame, so that the cab doesn't I figured I'll start with kind of as far down as the travel can go, and I'll put that shock without the spring in there, see where the top of it is at full compression, and kind of start with that as a baseline. Right now, I'm just going to kind of nick the corner off here, and then I'll come back in later and do it nicely, but that way I can lower it down a little bit more and get a better idea of what it'll be when it's bottomed out. I'll give us a little bit more.
Crazy. I can feel the JDM vibes just radiating off my skin. Or maybe that's
probably the wood stove.
Pajamas.
Yeah, that's...
Will, you're in sweatpants. Those are not pajamas.
These are my pajamas.
I hope you're not going to go get in bed wearing those. They're kind of covered in crap.
Oh. So is my bed. It's got 10mm sockets in there.
That I believe, because Will has spent the night in my loft a few times, and I found a 14mm wrench.
You never know when you're gonna need it.
In the sleeping bag up there. 14mm wrench. You don't notice that when you go to sleep?
No.
Ah. You're a swindler, Will.
Show me where your phone is.
My front pocket, right here.
Nice, Will. You're learning. You're learning.
Yep.
The good news is, it's pretty close with the shock compressed and the tire more or less bottomed out in the fender right now. The top part is pretty close to where it was before. That gives me an indication that the travel will be kind of about what I was anticipating here. And then I can just kind of pick an angle for the shock to be at. And start making some things. And a pancake. Cigar in a while. That's overkill as heck. That's the goal, though. A little crossbar action in here to support between the shock towers. And then I'll bust out the computer and do some CAD. Draw up some fancy schmancy shock mounts. I've got the beginnings of my design here for the shock mounts, and this just represents the round tube that, it's mounting to. These represent different possible options for where the shock could be mounted. So this is kind of the one where I think it's going to be best. And then I went and measured one that's kind of way down here, which puts the shock at a steeper angle or a shallower angle, depending on which way you look at it, which gives it more travel. And then this would be the opposite of that. And so I just kind of plotted those 3 points and I drew an arc through them. And now I'm going to actually delete this one because it's not quite centered. And then I'll start a new one that's just a little different there. And now those are equally spaced along that line. Now I can just split that in half and add in extra holes that, just more points of adjustability, because it doesn't take much more in terms of designing it. And then that way there's all sorts of different options for where to mount it. Or if we get different shocks later on or different springs, then we have all these different positions that we can use. So, science or something.
Hexagons were a needed touch.
They always are.
looks like a worthy scrap.
Yeah, it's dramatically overkill, but I either have this, which is 11 gauge, which, I mean, it would work, but there's no reason to make it that thin because it's such a small piece. So, we'll make it out of this. I think this is quarter. Not quite, which is as intended, because we can put it out a little bit, and it'll be more round. Oh. Ah, yes, that's pleasing. That's the hole that I kind of intended for to be the standard one. These shocks don't really have pivots built into them on the ends. They're just kind of a rubber bushing, so I gotta make sure that I get this pretty close to the right angle this way, or we'll tweak. Yeah, looks like it was meant to be that way. I almost just touched it. It's very hot. What I'm gonna do here is I have this one cut out for the other side, you know, for the matching one of this. But if I put it in here on this side, I can tell how much I need to modify it, because obviously this tube is in a different spot. And that was a really great idea, but it doesn't really work because it needs a bunch trimmed off the bottom, but I can at least get kind of a rough idea. According to my calculations, that's about where that this notch needs to move to in relation to where it was. So now I just gotta redraw the boundaries, and we'll be in business. Well, would you just look at that? Let's see how these shocks do. Wink. Look at that. It's on its own weight again. Gotta get it squished down a little bit. There's always a lot of resistance to squish because the tires have to move out on the ground. Here, we'll just do a little. Nice. That doesn't even seem unreasonably soft. I mean, it's definitely on the soft side. But I can add some preload to the shocks too. Look at that. Seems to be where it likes to sit.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's leaned forward a little bit, but we can fix that with some more preload. And we can also try out some different holes in the shock mounts. I cranked up the preload on these shocks, what little adjustment there is, and now I'm moving them out one hole from where they were, which should also stiffen them up a little bit because it changes the angle and therefore the leverage. We'll move it up, see how it likes that. Well, it's not really a drop test because the jack goes down kind of slow. Oh, premium. Yeah, that looks really nice in there. Bjorn, come here. What do you think? What do you think? How's the... How am I going to do the steering? Well, I don't see how that's going to help.
Bjorn, I might have to let you out if you're going to be that lit. Are you going to be less lit out here?
I've decided that the next thing I should work on is the steering because it's the next most complicated thing. Also, I looked at it and the radiator is going to fit really nice right in here. It puts it a little closer to the engine and the hot exhaust, but I can always make a little heat shield for that, and you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be blowing air at that from the other direction. So if anything, it'll just keep the engine cooler. here's the power steering rack. The input is in the wrong place, pointing the wrong way, as you can see. So I'm going to unbolt that and mess around with it a little bit and see what options I have. Now that's an interesting little doodad, if you ask me. But hey, it works, right?
That is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Very specific. Well, that worked. Right. Now, odds are those are the same spline count and rough size. Hey, look at that. Let's say it would come through here. Then the shaft would end up somewhere in this vicinity, and then it'd still have to make that really sharp turn there. Annoying. I've investigated further, and moving that steering box doesn't really help me in any way. Definitely the obvious solution at the moment is to take this steering rack and move it to the front of the axle instead of behind the axle. Because then I could put it like right here, and then, you know, the steering shaft would just go whoop, right up there. So that would totally work, but I don't like it for a couple of reasons. One, I have to refigure the location of it to get the best or the least bump steer. And then also, it messes up the Ackerman steering geometry. If you don't know what Ackerman steering geometry is, look it up. It's pretty cool, but basically it makes it go around tight corners better. And if you flip the knuckles, the Ackerman geometry is reversed. So yeah, what I would do is put that knuckle on that side and that one on that side, and the steering arms would be in front, and it would work. I've done that before, and it works, but it's just annoying, and I want to find a better solution, so. The thermometer on the side of the shop said like -8 or -10. Yay.
Premium. You will have that on these Idaho jobs.
You will indeed. This coil is slightly larger diameter, so that's a stiffer spring because it has an extra coil, and it's thicker, so considerably stiffer. So my thought is, there's hardly any weight back here now, even with the bed. So I'm gonna pull these rearmost ones because they have the least weight, right? The middle ones here have the weight of the engine and some of the weight of the cab. This has like nothing. So I'll pull these out. The shocks are different length, but the springs are the same, give or take. I'll swap them around because softer springs back here would make for a nicer ride quality and better off-road performance. And stiffer springs up front will help account for the weight of cab. So, you know, science or something. So there you have it. Steering science. This isn't exactly a race car, so what I've learned over the years is that you can get away with a lot of weird stuff when your primary driving surface is loose dirt and snow and ice, because things just handle vaguely in the first place. I'm gonna save these zip ties. I'm not gonna cut them, because I am a zip tie hoarder.
You never have enough zip ties.
And big zip ties like this, they're just so satisfying. You just can't let them go, you know? I just went and grabbed this piece of steering shaft that goes to the mini truck part. It's the right length. Look at that. And it's the same diameter. It's a different spline count, but that is ridiculous.
That's so cool.
Obviously, I got a little overexcited about the shaft situation here. And that's okay, because this is actually about ½ an inch too short. I thought maybe I could get away with just taking apart one of these U-joints and swapping with the end. But they're not the same diameter. So, onward to the proper solution, which is cut the shaft, splice them together, and make it a little bit longer in the process. Nice. Yeet. Whoop. Ooh. I can get this piece in the lathe, I could bore it out so that this one fits inside of it. Except I didn't leave extra length, so I can't do that.
You sounded excited over here.
Well, I just found a sleeve
Oh.
that fits, like, with unreasonable precision.
Oh my gosh.
That's very satisfying. So, now all I gotta do is bore out the other side a little bit to fit this shaft. And we'll be in business. There we have it. A perfect fit sleeve. Now, is it gonna warp when I weld it? Absolutely. But hopefully not too much. Aside from all the hexagons, that looks pretty dang factory right there. Look at that. That turned out rather nice.
That's super nice.
Yeah, those little boot things are very premium.
Yeah, it looks like it works great.
Yeah, it works pretty solidly. I don't like U-joints. They're confusing and they're black magic, and they make things rotate at different speeds as they go around. And consequently, there's parts of this that are harder to turn and easier as you turn it, but it'll be fine. And more importantly, that only took a day. So that's not bad at all. I thought that was gonna take a lot longer. And another part we need to order from eBay Motors here. This A-arm is, as Will would say, shreked. Now that the steering's done, you can hear that tie rod end is a little wiggly.
Yeah.
So some tie rod ends and an A-arm. Away we go to the eBay Motors app. Look at that. And they're beefed up. They have these little cross members in between them.
Nice.
And I think they're even adjustable. The upper one has the little adjuster screws there, so you can adjust the, well, you could adjust camber and caster with that, which is kind of cool. What do you think? You think that's an effective windshield wiper?
Yeah. Remember, I think at one point I made a comment about how these look like the ones on my car. I think I need to order some stuff off eBay Motors too.
I'll do a suspension test here. Oh, the back is stiffer. Yeah, well, I mean, it has twice as many shocks, so.
I can use the roof.
Both of your poses, Edwin, looked so much like twerking.
That's all I do.
We're twerking. Oh, no. It was a very productive week on the K-Truck 6x6 conversion here. Notice how I said it accurately this time? We read the comments. Turns out I'm an idiot and I don't know how to pronounce K-Truck. I mean, to be fair, look at how it's spelled. Anyway, we got front suspension, we've got steering, and the cab is, I don't know, I'd say 60% attached.
Show me where your phone is.
No! Oh no! Please!
Oh. And you don't even take it out of your back pocket, Will? Next episode, we might be able to go for a little test drive. I just gotta hook up fuel system, brakes, well, those are optional, and a little bit of wiring. I think next one's gonna be real exciting. But man, this thing is it's just so glorious. Aside from just shooting thumbnails, the reason we always bring things outside is so you can stand back and appreciate it.
I had a dream last night that I fell at doing a grind hard project and my phone just snapped in half and I was like, oh
That wasn't
no.
a dream, that was a vision of the future.
If you keep putting it in your back pocket, Will, it's just
And
gonna
it
keep
was in my
dying.
back pocket too. I landed on something sharp and it just cut it.
Oh no.
But it did save my butt, so butt surgery or broken iPhone. I don't know.
Ready to party? Yup. Party, gently. A gentle party. Hey, it's like it's driving already. Whee! Hey, this is great. I get to test out how smooth the steering is when I'm rolling. eBay Motors sponsored this video about finishing our 6x6 Ranger. But I worked on the wrong 6x6 Ranger. This is Jonathan, who is in charge of all of the deals that we've ever done with eBay Motors. Now, I just have to show him the 6x6 Ranger that we actually worked on.
Wait, there's another 6x6 Ranger?
There is.
Okay, I'm really confused right now.
You should be. You should be. Oh yeah, definitely knock the snow off. It's, you gotta really worry about the carpet in here. So technically, this is also a 6-wheel drive Ranger. It has 6 wheels. It's a Ranger,
That's epic.
and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Hey, you know what? I'm flexible, and this looks cool.
Sweet. Because this video is coming out very shortly.
I think it's coming out next week.
It's coming out tomorrow.
Oh my god.
So Edwin's editing it right now.
Yeah, this definitely needs some work.
And I think you were saying that that eBay Motors wants to promote their side-by-side stuff, and this is, or was, a Polaris side-by-side. Long travel, 6-wheel drive, street legal is the goal.
Well, this is premium, and
It is premium.
I approve. I cannot wait to see what you guys end up doing with this, and
Sweet.
the deal is that I need to come back out when this is finished.
And test drive it? You should definitely come back and test drive it
Awesome.
when it's finished.
Yeah, bro.
Sweet! Well, look at that. Wiper blades included. I think that's just about everything we need to make the little 6x6 mini truck premium.